We're going to have a
I'm a family of
conversation
some
about the gaming
entrepreneurs,
industry,
but not
and I'm really
really a lot
excited to be here with
kind of just
my
get you
peers. And there's some couple questions that we want to talk about, right, ladies?
Right.
All right, so first, let's throw a question out there. What is the largest challenge that we face in the gaming industry today? Anyone want to take that question?
I'll go for it. I would say probably one of the bigger things out there that I've faced personally and also with volunteering, I've faced it, is not being appreciated or feeling like that they need to talk to a man or talk to someone in charge, and that generally means a man, and not be appreciated. I'm not sure anyone else, but what do you think about that, Miriam?
Yeah, I mean, just getting dismissed is one big problem. Getting harassed, getting excluded, not being promoted, not being welcomed into communities. There are a lot of problems with gaming, including women, and so I think that there's lots of opportunity for people to start working on some of these solutions, from better tooling for moderation, better promotion of women who are content creators, and just the industry in general, just hiring more women.
From my perspective, I've been in the game industry for a number of years. I started in 1997. And as I've gotten older, and as a lot of my peers have gotten older, we face a lot of different forms of discrimination. Once you're over 40 in the tech industry, and we've heard this from other speakers, it's really hard to get hired. And so when I send out a resume that shows my breadth of experience starting in 1997 at Activision, folks don't even want to consider me because I am too old, too female. And the fact that I'm the executive director of Women in Games International, I'm a liability and a lawsuit waiting to happen. Folks don't want to even consider me as someone to hire because there's too much wrong with me. It doesn't matter that I have 20 years of experience and have worked on hundreds of AAA titles. I am dangerous. I'm a woman, and I've been around for a real long time, so I'm not going to want to listen to anybody else, they think, but also I'm just dangerous. And that's something that's really, really unfortunate. And I think a lot of folks will think that if they're a person of color who has a lot of experience, and that's really unfortunate.
No, I definitely concur with you, Belinda. Working at like one of the world's largest video game publisher, there's a lot of challenges in the boardrooms as we're trying to create new pathways for different type of content. Like, one of my passions is family and children. I'm a mother of three. I have a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 6-week-old. And I want to build video games for children. Well, of course, that might not be part of our core competency. And so there's a lot of risk when you walk into the boardroom and you're trying to fight for content that there's a consumer base. Like, you look at the Lego video games on consoles, they're still in the top 10, top 20, like, highest grossing video games. But you have to justify profit maximization for new content. And a lot of times you don't have the alliance and the support and buy-in around that content for demographics that aren't as common in the video game industry. And so, like, one of the things that I find that we have to constantly challenge against is making sure people want to challenge the status quo and not just build games for that typical gamer demographic, but build games for everybody, because that's the way we're going to increase profits across the globe, is just not by targeting one type of user, but all users.
It's a problem that I've seen in my entire career. It's a concept or a little term that I came up with literally in the 90s was, we like to make games for ourselves and our friends. And that was something that I saw folks doing in the 90s. And unfortunately, it's a bias that's still going on today, even though the demographic for video game players has expanded from here to here in the time that I've worked in the video game industry. There's still a difficulty in actually providing content for the new demographics, for the folks who are actually playing games all around the world. So just exactly speaking to your point.
Well, it's a great segue about, like, we're building games for ourselves. So let's talk about building games and the organization it takes to build those games. Miriam, you're VP of Engineering over at your company.
Yeah,
what is it like over there?
We've got this little motto that's esports for everyone, and we're pretty serious about the everyone piece. We're targeting the mobile space because we feel like it's the most accessible for people to kind of just casually join in. You don't have to like buy this expensive equipment. You don't have to know all the lingo. You don't have to you don't have to feel already like you're behind if you want to just dabble into gaming. And so we felt it was the most accessible platform, and we went after everybody. We hired a diverse team. We decided that we were not just going to target men. In fact, most of our players are women. 53% of the players at Skills are women. And we found a lot of success with that strategy. We became the #1 fastest growing company on the Inc. 500 just this year. And so there's proof that this stuff works, right? Sometimes seeing is believing, and you have to convince and challenge the status quo. But we're beyond not having proof that this stuff works. I think the proof is out there. I think people have like done enough work to show that this could work at a much larger scale.
And how about you, Belinda?
Well, you know, speaking to esports, I mean, this is something that Women in Games International, the organization that I head, is really excited about, is really bringing esports to girls and women. You know, this is a way that gamers can make a living playing video games, and we've tried to really promote esports for women. And unfortunately, one of the big drawbacks or the big things that are holding women back in esports is something that happens, unfortunately, in gamer communities, which is harassment. Harassment of girls and women players online, because esports is, you know, inherently an online, you know, world. And we've been really trying to promote esports for women and getting rid of some of the harassment, but also getting girls and women out there in a way that supports them and helps them. I'm not really sure what Skills does in that area, but I would like to hear about it.
So we kind of believe that you have to build the tooling and the teeth to kind of enforce a code of conduct. You have to ban people who are being trolls. You have to take action. If you want to make a welcoming space, you have to enforce some rules and hopefully also provide tools for women to create content. And that's gonna really like help everyone, right? I mean, can you imagine a world in which J.K. Rowling never got to publish Harry Potter? Like that's kind of where we are in gaming, where the contributions of half the population haven't really hit us. It's been very hard for women to make games, to promote games, but we see that in other industries when they are allowed to contribute, the whole society benefits, right? I mean, J.K. Rowling, Beyonce, like all of these industries, Wonder Woman, like, imagine a world with only Spider-Man. It's terrible. So, you know, we're trying to make it even out the platform so that we can have more, you know, women, indie developers, and mom and pop type studios be able to compete with the bigger studios on content alone.
Yeah, you know, there's a comment that I always hear, well, Laura, do I have to be a gamer to go into gaming? I mean, just kind of throwing that quickly because we're talking about like bringing more women into the industry. I mean, personally, you know, I always say, well, no, you don't have to be a hardcore gamer, but if you start working for EA, like, hopefully you'll play your products, right? How do you guys feel about like that tone around, you know, if we were to introduce this new slate of skilled workers, you know, do they have to be that hardcore gamer type? And for clarity, hardcore is like justify that you play maybe 20 to 30 at least minimum hours a week, would you say? Like, would be a hardcore gamer?
Probably out there. I think for me, it definitely does benefit when I would go into an interview, though, saying I was a gamer of those games or whatever. But, like, for sure, I don't think you have to be a hardcore gamer. I've met a lot of people volunteering at, like, something like PAX. I'm usually at the Indie Mega Booth, where it's a lot of indie gamers, and they're creating indie games. But some of them, yeah, never have gamed or really got into it until they started gaming and making a name for themselves.
So,
One thing about the industry, though, is there are a huge number of jobs in the video game industry: business, legal, operations, PR, marketing, events. I mean, the game industry is not just game design, and it's not just in engineering. It's not just level design. It's not just art. It's not just 2D and 3D design. The video game industry is a huge industry with a huge number of jobs. when I started in the video game industry, which was a long time ago, it has expanded greatly, but I knew as many lawyers as I knew programmers. So there are a lot of people in the game industry, and a lot of them are not necessarily hardcore gamers. Also, you don't have to be a hardcore console FPS or strategy or traditional what we think of as games. I am a hardcore casual gamer, and I have been since way before I was in the video game industry. You know what? If you play Candy Crush 3 hours a day, you are a hardcore gamer. Hardcore casual gamer, but you are still a hardcore gamer. And even if someone who plays Call of Duty 3 hours a day says you're not a gamer, that person is wrong.
We actually
Those games generate more money than the hardcore games, casual games. They generate more money for the industry. They put more food on the table for the video game industry workers than hardcore games. If you play Candy Crush 3 hours a day, you are a hardcore gamer. So don't feel bad. I play those games, not necessarily Candy Crush. I play hidden object games. I like to find things in little scenes. And I am a hardcore gamer, and anybody who tells me I'm not, I will tell them they're wrong, and I will tell them why, and I will talk to them about the money, and I know more than them, and I've paid my bills for 20 years working in the game industry. So there.
Awesome. Yeah, no.
I was just going to say, we have a player on our platform that crossed over from casual to pro. He actually did give up his day job and makes his living playing mobile bowling. Like, he's a pro bowler, and he made the most money of any pro bowlers, but he is a mobile bowler. So, you can actually cross over into, if you want to just play games for a living, doing that, but there's so much more to it, right? You can be a streamer, you could be a musician, you can do art, there's so much to putting together the experience of a
I know
video game.
so many audio people, and I know so many voiceover actors. Oh my
Yes.
goodness, who work in video games.
Yeah, well,
Tons
and
of them.
I was going to say, if there's any football fans, at Madden we have a championship. I want to say the grand prize is maybe it's around like $1 million. Don't quote me on that, but it was a lot of money where I was going to quit my day job and say, forget Star Wars, let me go play Madden. But so let's talk a little bit about building games, since I'm assuming the context for building a game and working in the industry and designing for an audience. Like, what are some of the unique elements? And I'll start of designing games and for an audience. One of the things I talk about is designing for females, design for women and children in games. And when you have these AAA titles that are predominantly skewed towards a male consumer base, especially in like your Battlefronts and your Battlefield first-person shooters, I was just telling my colleagues here, one of the things I want fresh out of the box, I don't want to have to go find it, I don't want to have to go to a blog, I want a skinned automatic rifle that is in pink, like magenta hot pink, and I want it coming with the game, because my character is a woman, you should just automatically assign a pink gun to my character. Those are the types of things that, imagine if you, I'm not trying to promote guns, but imagine if you saw a game where everything was in these colorful colors and skewed towards spring colors, and you're like, wow, this is so unique, I would have never experienced this. It automatically gives psychological essentially notation to that individual that says, hey, we are marketing towards you and we are designing towards you. And something in Star Wars that we've started to look at with RPGs is the Star Wars universe has so many women characters. If you've ever, it's more than just Princess Leia. There's a slate of female characters. And so what if you could take on a Jedi battle with all female characters, or, look at the Sith demographics and have female characters and actually play your squad in an all-female character zone. That's something that, again, kids growing up, when they love Star Wars, little girls can see something that resembles them. And I think that's something that's been unique to me, is really trying to find these design elements that are so subtle, but just a hint of that pink, just a hint of a female character, just a hint of a different style, just a hint that during their dialogue, they're essentially a couple, having a union, whatever the case may be, that expands the consumer base. What about you gals?
sometimes I will spend more time creating my avatar than actually playing a game, like if the game turns out to not be that good. But you do want to have that option of like, I want my avatar to look like me. I want to feel like I belong in this game, like I can actually participate, and it isn't something that I have to go and work extra hard to do, right? It's here for everyone. This game is kind of making the tools available for everyone to participate. And that's the kind of thing that you want to have right up front, because if you want to start like increasing the funnel of your audience, like you have to make that stuff available right up front. You have to make that welcoming message the first thing that you see, so that you don't feel like this game isn't for me, you know?
Yeah, no, totally.
There are a lot of games that are coming out these days that have more female main characters. There are a couple of games that have come out just this year that have duo female characters, where it's a pair of women who are the main characters that are working together to solve problems. It's happening more and more. There have been, LGBTQ characters as main characters, as not non-NPCs, but as main characters. It's happening more and more. I'm not sure about the pink guns. Not sure about the pink guns.
No, I'm going to design our first
Yes.
pink gun.
Yeah, but it's happening more and more as a response to Gamergate and all the problems that happen in the industry, and also just folks just plain complaining about, hey, how come? I mean, there was a thing that happened at E3 a few years ago where a designer, people said, how come there are no women in your game? And they said, oh, they're too hard to animate, and the entire industry said, you are full of shit. That is absolutely not true, and you just lied. And you lied to your peers who know about animation, and you think you're going to fool us? And of course, they got hugely, I'm not going to name names, but they got hugely criticized for that. And then, of course, everybody came back and, with some responses to that. So there are some changes that are happening, and the games that have made these changes are getting huge press and huge popularity, and really, really good, PR for their companies. And so when that happens, more and more companies are making these changes. It is happening a heck of a lot slower than it should have. We're in 2017, and women have been, huge, playing these games for 10 plus years. Way more than 10 years. I mean, I was playing them a long time ago. But, it's just really starting to get more and more attention, and attention nationally in non-gaming press. And that's really what had to happen, it seemed, because when it had attention in the gaming press, it was not given the attention that it really needed. But things, honestly, while Gamergate did a lot of bad things, it opened up the floodgates for, basically the alt-right to come in and just, say, hey, look at all of us, we're big and strong, we can do a lot of things. But it also opened up the floodgates for, hey, things are worse out there than we thought. We need to come back and say, and say no to this. I think it's going to change more. I mean, for me, and what I've been saying literally for the 10 plus years that I've been in the press talking about this is a money issue. Look at our market. Look at how our market has expanded in the X number of years. Look who's playing these games. This needs to be market driven. We need to actually make the games for the people who are playing them. It doesn't have to be done because we're nice. It doesn't have to be done because we're PC. It needs to serve the market. We need to serve the people who are playing games worldwide. Don't do it because you're nice. Don't do it because you're a good guy. Do it because you serve your verticals in your market.
Well, I was going to say, Belinda, you're right. But I think what happens, and, you have demographics who don't understand, the children market or the women market. And so what happens and I see this in the large studios, is, okay, we tried to put out this level that was targeted towards women, and it made no money. And then I go and I'm like, well, explain how you designed it. And then they tell me, and I'm like, well, that's why it made no money, because it wasn't designed for that demographic.
Unfortunately, it's because they have the same people doing this, making the games, the same people at the high levels. This is exactly why we see, does diversity actually help products? Yes, it does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so in terms of your advice to folks in the audience and those who are watching the video, what would be a unique element or a recommendation or advice or piece of information that would transcend, the gaming industry and just kind of be a unique perspective of what we have? Anybody want to take that on? Like for me, what I would say is consumer-based products, whether video game or whether Uber app or what have you, a lot of times design is taken on, and I know this firsthand, and what happens is there's bias in design. And I talk a lot about this with my team, where when we're designing levels, avatars, games, the overall core loop of the game, we have to ask ourselves, are we isolating any demographic, like, without conscious? Are we isolating anybody? And that's a really tough question to really break down and decipher through. And so what I would suggest to you guys is if you are influencing any consumer-based product in your industry, one of your check marks you should have on your product list is, are there any biases? And if there are, that's okay, especially if you're targeting a user group. But just be cognizant of it and then figure out the process you need to then look at the other target demographics so that you don't create isolation, because that's the end results that you don't want. You can have biases, but have those biases where you don't create isolation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like if you set out to build something, you should be very intentional about every piece of that, including the team that you hire to build whatever you want to build, and having that intention up front of like, I do want to make a lot of money, and I do want to include everyone in this, and be real about that. Like if you want to build something that's just for men, that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to end up with a product that only men like, maybe. And if you want something that is actually going to be more broad and appeal to a broader audience, you really have to have the team behind you that can do that, and don't pretend that you can dictate what the market wants. That usually just doesn't work.
Kind of like also standing your ground, like finding like your voice. Always, don't be afraid to say something like that might sound stupid, but it's nothing stupid. Like that whole like there's no wrong question kind of thing. But it's with that like I've always stood my ground, and it's also why I'm back into freelance, is because I get to have my own voice, I get to have my own way, and I'm also like working a lot with going back to the children thing, kind of like with a children group thing right now with these two adults, and they're trying to create a game that is inspired with children. And it's like one of those things, we need to get more STEM programs out there, more stuff like that for video games, because I kind of wish I had known about this sooner. I kind of fell into this in college.
I think another thing is to definitely speak to the money. The video game industry is a heavily money-driven business, and video game development gets more and more and more expensive every year. And of course, we're doing cross-platform development, and so meaning on many, many platforms, console and mobile and PC. And so we really need to speak to the money. And when I would see problems in development, I would definitely say, this is a financial issue, and it's going to cost money here, and it's going to cost money here, it's going to cost money here, and it's going to cost money here for these reasons. I did not talk about nice. I did not talk about sweet and kind and various other PC reasons. I said, this is a legal problem. This is a customer support problem, and this is this kind of a problem. And I never, ever had a problem with people, coming back at me with a backlash. As to no, we don't. We're gonna do this because we like it. The game industry understands money, and I think that's true across tech.
Well, ladies, I think we're between us and lunch for everybody. So why don't we close this off with what is your favorite all-time favorite game, and what are you playing now? Anybody? I mean, I can start. So my favorite uber favorite game is Duck Hunt. Maybe that's how I got it. Got into shooters. And I'm playing Overwatch now. So.
All right, I'll go. I'm a huge Zelda fan. I actually have a Zelda room with my partner in our house in San Francisco. So I started with Ocarina of Time and starting to play a little bit more Breath of the Wild right now, but I'm also playing Overwatch as well.
The game I remember the story the most is The Last of Us. The game I'm playing right now is Destiny 2.
You got a copy?
My favorite game is Solitaire. I've been playing that ever since I've ever had a computer. I play it then, I play it now. I go back to it. I've always gone back to it. It's a easy way to get my head out of whatever, stop whatever stress, whatever. But my favorite games are hidden object games, and I've discovered a new little genre of them. And the most recent favorite is this Harry Potter. Called Cases. Cases, I'm not sure, but it was created by a British developer called Mediatonic, and it was this Fantastic Beasts, Cases of something. Anyway, it was off of the Fantastic Beasts universe, a hidden object game in the Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts universe, and it was super fun by a British developer called Mediatonic on mobile, and it was just a Harry Potter hidden object game. And that was my most favorite game recently.
Awesome.
But Solitaire is a video game.
Well, I was going to throw a shout out. Like, I play Plants vs. Zombie with my kids. So if you want a kid-based game, that's a good one.
That's fun, too.
I liked it even as an adult.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Belinda, Miriam, Kay, and myself, Laura. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today. Any questions? Sure. And there's, I think, a mic coming your way. FedEx Express, here we go. And it's...
In my experience, I feel like indie games are a really good doorway for underrepresented minorities and women to get into game development. A lot of my favorite indie games are written by people that are underrepresented minorities. But indie games are indie, they don't make it into the mainstream. So I was wondering, are you starting to see that change as a freelancer? Are indie games becoming more popular? And as a result of that, are underrepresented minorities in the gaming industry starting to get more exposure?
So the question was about minorities and games, and me as a freelancer, I have noticed the change, especially when Steam Greenlight came out. I actually got 2 games greenlit on that service. So it was kind of like a big deal. It was one of my GDCs. We got it greenlit the day of the Wednesday, with this big conference. Definitely see a lot more coming out there. Like I've seen on one of the podcasts I listen to, they talk relating to some of the stuff out there. And one of the games out there that I actually got to know the developers was that Dragon Cancer. And that game has definitely become larger, and they started in the indie realm. So yeah, I think it's definitely gotten bigger, and it is slow paced, but yeah, it is definitely getting bigger, and I appreciate it, especially being a queer, non-binary, femme, facing person. I definitely have seen a lot of change.
I think for us, we definitely catered mostly to indie developers, and we want to provide a channel for them to kind of promote the game to an existing player base and to be able to monetize that, because a lot of the times what you end up finding with indie developers is they don't know how they're going to make the money. And that's kind of what our platform is trying to do. We're providing money via competition. And that does work for some games, and some game makers are finding success with that. And so I think it's a great way to kind of democratize the industry and allow the content to speak for itself, and good games or good game makers can make a profit and make a living, don't have to do this as a side job.
I just attended Indiecade in LA just a couple weeks ago, and there were a couple of games there that I saw that I'd actually heard about through the industry press before I even got there, and then I've heard about them subsequently even. So the indie scene is totally different than it was, and it was the 10th anniversary of Indiecade. I've been every year. I know the organizer well, and the indie industry or indie scene, I guess, has very, very much changed, and it's definitely a route. I mean, it's actually getting to a point of discoverability issues. So it's definitely a way for people to get discovered. And the fact that we have Unity, where you can port you can create on one platform and port to multiple platforms. Of course, you got Steam, but I mean, indie games can even port to console. So I mean, it is got a lot more opportunity than it ever did before.
Awesome. And in closing, the more there are of diversity in the gaming industry, the more opportunities there are in general. It's a network effect. So We encourage those that are interested to come in to seek us offline. You have our Twitter handles. Definitely feel free to reach out. And with that, thank you again. We're going to close up our talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.